Hello, welcome back to my channel. It's been a couple months. I think my last one was about mid-September. Been very busy. Very busy as normal. Um, so I think the so this is gonna be it's gonna be a November reading wrap up actually, and it's also just gonna be a wee catch up of what I've been doing in the last 2 months. I think the biggest news um that we have is I think I mentioned it in my last video, but we were um, looking to foster at the end of September. We were looking to foster a new dog, Guinness. As Guinness is here, he has been with us since the um, end of September, and we fell in love with him straight away. He is such a great doggy. He has been he's gonna move because there's a squirrel. Get out the way! Get out the way! Um, we got a squirrel highway here. So it's just him and Boy have gotten on so well. They made really good friends really quickly. So we just pretty much straight away we just decided to adopt him, and so he has been our dog fully adopted since the start of November. About November 11th, I think, was about when it was made official. So yeah, we are now a 2-dog family, and he is such a cuddle bunny. It's so nice. He's a bit more of a listener than Boy. He's border collie mix, so he does like to be active and do stuff, but is also a little. He's 6 years old, so he's a little bit more chill. He does know how to relax. He likes to cuddle. Yeah, and him and Boy just love playing with each other, and they get on really well. They're really good to each other. And Boy, he likes dogs, but he does. He likes dogs, but he tends to get bored or disinterested of them quite quickly. And with him and Guinness, they just really seem to make friends quite quickly and stay friends. And yeah, they like hang around each other. Boy's just here. He doesn't. He's an aloof cuddle. I like to call him. He likes to cuddle my feet and legs more than come right up. If he hasn't seen me for a while, or if because I'm out all day. I'm home alone right now, so I'm out all day. So sometimes he will come more up when he's feeling a bit more lonely. But for the best part, he likes to be on my legs, and this one likes to be in my arms. So yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. Just getting to know the wee guy and really him getting to know us. He took about 10 minutes to warm up to us, and then after that he was just really understood that we were here for him and we had his best interests at heart, and that we're just pretty relaxed people. And yeah, just really fell right into our lifestyle really well, and we take him on adventures. Not so much now because it's snowed. We're fully into winter now, but definitely in during the fall, end of fall, we took him on a lot of adventures, and it's just been lovely, a lovely addition. Yeah, you're such a lovely addition. So yeah, that's the big news. Just otherwise been pretty busy with work and the usual. I don't really get much of a wind down. Going into Christmas season, it's still pretty busy for me. It's just my job's pretty much always gonna be busy. And yeah, looking forward to having a few days off at Christmas, and I've recently started doing a local pub quiz with my neighbours, which has been really nice. We've gone 2 weeks and we've won two, and we've won both of them, so that's a little additional bonus there. And other than that, I've started playing in a different league for soccer. I think I'm gonna continue. I'm a great bunch of lads, and it's gonna like more. It's more of the kind of style and like skill level that I want to play at, and hopefully it will also give me an in to playing the 11-a-side summer league that I've been trying to get into for a year now. So yeah, I'm quite excited about that. One downside is I did probably fracture my pinky finger, which um, realizing how much of an unsung hero the pinky is to the hand. It's kind of hard to do a lot of things well without a pinky. You can still do things with a hurt pinky. It's just doing them well is a little bit harder. It actually affects. It's actually hard to write. It's on my right hand, so it's actually quite hard to write well. My handwriting is terrible anyway, but it's gotten even worse with this pinky. And it's gotten to a point where I actually had to splint it. I've left my splint at work, but I've had to splint it basically and anytime I'm not working because I can't write with the splint at all, so I have to take it off at work. But ho hum, I used to play rugby, so I'm quite used to play. I'm quite used to having little like niggles and injuries. So it's been a while since I've really had something like this, but it will heal. I rest it when I'm not playing, so it will heal. It's fine. Just something to have a little gripe about. Other than that, yeah, November was a great reading month for me. I managed to read 4 books, which is pretty good for me. I know most of you probably do that in a week, but for me that's pretty awesome. I don't think I've done a 4 book four book month this year at all. I think probably my best month previously was probably like February, where I did about 3. Usually I read a bit more in the winter time, just because a bit less to do, less time to go out, and you kind of, especially when it's snowy or icy, you don't really want to head out, so I tend to stay home more. Obviously take these guys out for walks, but the snow tires them out a little bit more too, which is nice. So they tend to have a little bit more of a relaxed time in the winter. So this is basically most of my weekend is in between. So it's basically this with reading, or it's out for a walk, out on the walk. So it's quite nice. And yeah, it's definitely nice having been wedged in with dogs and you read. So the books that I read in November, I started off with The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. It's the second in the Thursday Motor Club series. I got this out from the library. I've been binging a lot of Richard Osman content recently. This year I got into The Rest is Entertainment, which is his podcast he does with Marina Hyde. Highly recommended, very interesting, very funny. I find them both very funny. They have a kind of humor that I like, and Marina Hyde is very cynical too. I've definitely grown up reading her journalism. Definitely someone that I definitely grew up really knowing and reading and also like consuming anytime she was on like any talking head shows kind of thing. So yeah, love that. And I've also been watching lots of House of Games, which is his celebrity quiz show. It kind of is. It's very much a light-hearted, very easygoing celebration. Definitely very much a celebration of British quiz shows, but also a little bit tongue in cheek as well. It's very good. I just watch it on YouTube. So you should check it out if you can. So yeah, so the Man Who Died Twice. I really enjoyed the book. I felt actually I liked the first one, but mildly. I didn't come out of it was like, whoa, it was amazing. It was so like, my main gripes were the kind of the humor got in the way of the plot, and the plot wasn't that amazing. Like, it didn't, like, if you got rid of the humor parts, the plot, I don't think the murder mystery wasn't wouldn't have sustained the entire novel. I don't think it would have been that great. The humor parts definitely saved it, but then like definitely went out of his way sometimes to make that, which probably also kind of hurt the plot a little bit. Um, so it was kind of a little bit of a have your cake and eat it situation. Um, whereas I felt this one, the second one, was actually much better at it was more interested in developing the characters, and so the humor could come out much easier. There was a lot more like the four main characters. There was a lot more of their development. There's a lot more focus on them. The plot of it was very basic. It was um it was simple enough to allow all the other stuff to happen, which I think is actually a much better formula for these books. And yeah, and then there was humor, but it didn't felt it was still great humor, and I do find his humor incredibly funny, so that was great. But it was more, it gave it more room to breathe and happen organically rather than kind of forcing it and ramming it down your throats. And I'm not one for I'm not one that's against necessarily the forced humor. Um, but there's a fine line, and you don't want to get into a position where you have kind of like the plot and the humor kind of button heads with each other. You kind of want them to be either melding or kind of separate, I guess. I don't know. I'm not great at explaining these things, but I thought this one was much more successful. I read it really quickly, and I really enjoyed it. And I am looking forward to reading the next one in the series. Sorry, I have my Goodreads on the computer because I am terrible at remembering the books that I've read. Necessarily, I kind of remember the ones I've read, just can't remember which order they read them in. So next up in November, I read The Reader by Bernard Schlink, and a lot of you probably know this one from the movie with Kate Winslet and Ralph Fiennes, and I can't remember the young guy German actor, but he was very good in it too. I think it came out the same year that Slumdog Millionaire came out, and I went to see it at the cinema, and it really annoyed me. It really appalled me actually, and this book appalled me just as much. I knew I was gonna hate this book, and it's all for the same reasons that I hated the movie. I just don't understand, or either I don't understand what the book is trying to say, or I do understand what the book is trying to say, and that disgusts me because essentially it feels like it's Holocaust apologia, and I can't stand that. I can't stand anything that tries to humanize the people that were perpetrators of the Holocaust. It was completely evil. Yes, I can understand that there were people that didn't really know or understand what was going on. I fully understand that that they didn't that even if they heard some stories, they just thought they couldn't fathom that was actually happening. But that's not what we're talking about here. So basically, the reader. I mean, this is going to be all. This is going to be all spoilers. If you really want to watch the movie or read the book, you probably should have turned off before now. But anyway, basically, what happens is our protagonist is a young German student. I think he's like 15 or 16 when we first find out about him. He's basically late high school age. And he's ill. he is basically out one day and he contracts a pretty, like, I can't remember what it was, but it was one of the pretty appalling ones that really knocks you out and potentially could have killed him, but because he's young and fit and that, then he's fine. But he months of bed rest. And then when he eventually starts to be able to go out again. Oh no, wait, sorry. He is ill at the start, but he first becomes really ill. I think this when he first becomes really ill when he's out in public, and he's taken in by a streetcar conductor, tram conductor, and he's basically gone to hospital. And so when he is better, when he is recovered and is able to go out, he goes to find this person, and says thank you. And it turns out that this person is in their 30s, I believe it was. They were like mid-30s. And they end up spending some time together. End up having a sexual relation. And don't forget, this guy was like 15, 16, something like that. End up having a sexual relationship. That she's a bit strange to him and has a bit of a temper and as was quite volatile at one point. When he leaves a note, she thought he had abandoned her, but he left a note. She became very aggressive with him. And oh yeah, sorry. And they have a sexual relationship, but they get closer, and he ends up she likes him reading to her. So basically, so part of their relationship is he's reading to her. They have a sexual relationship, and he is kind of becoming increasingly enamored by her. We don't really know what she's getting out of it. Although, because it doesn't read like that, it doesn't read that she's using him for the sex or is using him for the companionship. It's very unclear what her motivations are. But anyway, one day she just disappears. She's not at a flat. The flat's been abandoned, released. He contacts her employer, and basically is told, "Oh, she just upped and left. Don't know why. She just upped and left, and it was a shame because she was such a good worker that I was promoting her to become a train driver." And then, anyway, fast forward on to our main protagonist is a student at university. He's been a law student, and it's a part of being a law student. He's signed up for this. I guess it's kind of like a study group. It's kind of a study groups type thing where it's kind of an elective mini course kind of thing that they take, and it's specifically focusing on the kind of Holocaust. Kind of this in because this is all set in like I think the 60s. I think this is all set in the 1960s. But anyway, during this time there's a whole the kind of new German people the youth, especially around kind of like the 1968 movement, student movement. So there's the whole kind of rectifying what their parents did in the war. Um, so a lot of the youth just don't understand. They're actually just so a lot of them just cannot bear what their what even the parents were even just in like civil service, whatever. They just can't rectify it. So that, you know, there's lots of trials, and it's and basically there's a whole social um, debate about who should be liable for the Holocaust. Who should be paid? How far down the ranks should they go to like criminally prosecute people for basically for crimes against humanity? And so part of this, they go to a trial, and it's a trial of these, I think it's like 5 or 6 women prison guards who basically during a forced march, um, they had to stop, and they stopped at this church, and there was all the prison guards were in like the clergy's house, all in the house, and then all of the concentration camp prisoners, I guess, for want of a better word, they were locked in the church, and then something happened, and the church caught fire, and none of the prison guards did anything to save to save the, the the people, and a lot of them were women and children, and so they're on trial as this was them. They were basically on trial saying that this was their actions. It wasn't them just doing their job. This didn't come from orders on high. So they're basically being accused of the crime against humanity, essentially. And so it turns out, so he's at the trial, just watching it. Turns out that his former lover is one of the people on trial. And he finds out that basically, I think he already knew this part of her history, but essentially she, when the war broke out, she was working at Siemens factory, and then she actually signed up to work in the SS. She signed up to work as a prison guard, essentially. So this is part of why I don't understand this, if it's trying to argue that this person was just doing their job, but they actively signed up to be a prison guard. It's because, yeah. But anyway, so during the course of the trial, he realizes that she's illiterate. And basically the other detainee, the other people, the other defendants basically get together and accuse her of being the leader, issuing the orders, because apparently she wrote the report, and she admits, and she just flat out admits to all of it, because first she says no, and then they'll say, we can do a handwriting analysis, and then she goes, no, it was me, it was all me, don't need to, I admit. And so that's when our protagonist figures out that she's illiterate, and that she's basically just copping to this to hide the fact that she's illiterate, because it's deeply embarrassing to her. The reason that she upped and left her tram job was because if she got promoted, she'd have to take an exam. So they find out she was illiterate. The reason she left Siemens in the first place and went to be a concentration camp guard was because she was about to be promoted, and thus her illiteracy would have been found out. So basically, she's been running away from this her whole life. But I don't understand that is not being illiterate is not a good enough reason to be. It's not a get out of jail free card for crimes against humanity. So I don't understand if that is what Bernard-Sling is trying to argue, is trying the point he's trying to make. It's disgusting. It's horrible. So I don't understand if that's what it is. And not only that, she's also basically a predator. She's having a sexual affair with someone 20 years younger than her. Yeah, mind-boggling. I like, as far as the writing style, I like the writing style. It worked well. It's quite straightforward and to the point. There's not a lot of like flowery prose or huge turns of phrase. But I liked the style. I read it pretty quickly. I just don't understand. And anyway, throughout, she gets convicted, goes to prison. Throughout his adulthood, he continues to I think he continues to like write her, does record audiobooks for her. He has a marriage, it fails. It partly fails because he still has this weird obsession with this person. And she basically kind of learns to read just so that she could read his letters and stuff. And then eventually she's released when she's probably in her 80s or something. She's pretty old, and he's middle-aged by this point. So yeah, he's probably in his 40s, 50s, and she's in her 80s. And he finds her a home in that, and I think that's when he sees her for the first time. Because he never goes to visit in prison, but when she's released, basically she has no one else. So the prison guard kind of asks the prison, what do they call it? Whoever runs the prison basically asks him to come get her, find her somewhere to live and stuff, which he does. And I think at the end of the book he realizes he's kind of done with her or something. Like he has a very weird feeling towards her. She's still kind of like, he's like the most important person in her life, but she isn't the most important person in his life. So yeah, it was a bit of a downer of an ending too, but I just don't understand. It just infuriated me. What? I don't know. What it was trying to argue, or wasn't trying to argue, or I just don't understand. I just did not like being in the presence of these people. I would not. Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend reading it. But if you've already seen the movie and you're curious about the source material, then it's there. I have resisted reading it for a long time. I just happened to find it in a little free library, so I thought no harm, no foul kind of thing. And I was ultimately curious. I just wanted a quick read. Ultimately curious as if the film really did represent the book properly, and it did. It really did. It's a good adaptation in that sense. But yeah, hated both of them for the same reason. And then after that, I read The Fabulous Clip Joint by Frederick Brown. Kerman Ollie had been reading some Frederick Brown, Can't remember if it's this book or another one. Probably another one. And I had realized that I had only read Frederick Brown's sci-fi. I had not read any of his detective or any of his crime fiction. So this was actually the first one, and I found it on for Kindle for like $1, which was kind of neat. So I thought, yeah, I'll give it a try. It's the first in a series of the it's like a son, not son, it's like a nephew, uncle nephew, twosome. So basically at the start we have was it Ed Hunter, I believe it is. He is a apprentice, like an apprentice printer. Works for his father. Fairly likes life. Has a step mother who has a bit of a tempestuous relationship with, and has a step sister, which I guess, well, not even. I guess it's I guess it's a step. Yes, it's a stepsister, I believe. Yes, it's a stepsister. It's not his father's. It's not his father's daughter. It's from a previous marriage from his stepmother, and they have a weird pseudo sexual frisson thing happening. Um, it's very weird. It's like she knows that she's also like quite. She's also in her like early teens or mid teens, I guess, and is kind of coming into. I guess it would put the way they would describe it back then, coming into her womanlyhood. Um, and she kind of knows the power of her body. He's starting to understand the power of her body, and it's very weird and makes you feel a little bit icky. But thankfully, that isn't in the book too much. And then, so basically, his father's coming home from the pub and is murdered in an alleyway. And the police aren't really getting anywhere. He doesn't know who to turn to. The father was the main breadwinner of the family. So he kind of feels a little bit responsible for helping the mother and the stepmother out, even though he doesn't really like her that much. And he doesn't know who to turn to, and the only person he can really think of is his Uncle Am, who works as a carny. So Uncle Am he goes off to Uncle Am, explains the situation. Uncle Am comes to town to investigate. They find that there's this weird insurance policy that his father took out just before they moved, because they live in Chicago now, but they moved from somewhere else. I think just outside, like there's the I think they moved from Gary, Indiana, because there's Chicago, there's Gary, Indiana, and then there's another, I think Idaho or something. Like it's basically Southern Illinois, Northern Indiana, or Northern Idaho. Something. There's like a trifecta of states there that they all basically share the same geography, even though they're in 3 different states. So they moved very quickly from there when Ed was younger, and there's an insurance policy taken out, which is a little bit weird. So basically, they get to investigating, and they end up solving the crime, and it was pretty good. Not as good as his science fiction. He was an all-round pulp writer. He wrote basically anything, and he'd write westerns, he'd write sci-fi, he'd write crime, depending on who was paying. So he's quite prolific. But it was good. I enjoyed it. I'd probably continue the series. Definitely worth the $1.32 that I spent on it. Read it as a Kindle version. Been kind of getting into my Kindle a bit more. Been quite interesting reading on the Kindle. Bit more flexibility, especially with the slightly hurt hand. It's definitely easier to hold. So yeah, I rather enjoyed it. I probably gave it like a 3-star. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars exactly. Yeah, probably if you want to to read a really good Frederick Baum, but probably look for his science fiction. If you want just a solid crime fiction, then yeah, you can't go wrong. Frederick Baum. And then the last one I read in November, it was Never Say No to a Killer by Clifton Adams. And this was absolutely fantastic. It's an old crime thriller, very noir. This one is I would definitely say is a classic noir. I think it was published in 59, something like that, around in the late 50s. I think that's when it was published. Maybe a bit later. This was a repress one by Planet Monk Pulps. Also a Kindle edition, I believe, just between $1 and $2. So it was incredibly cheap. Great. I hadn't read Clifton Adams before. I kind of vaguely knew of him, more of a Western writer. But this was absolutely fantastic. Not one single likable character. So if you have to have at least one likable character in your books, this is not a book for you. But it says so much about America and about personal greed and even just the system of capitalism and how it just can create evil in anyone. So essentially, it starts off with a prison break. Our main man breaks out of prison, and thus doing so, kills the prison guard. But he has absolutely no remorse because he says this prison guard was just an evil SOB who would torture people, who would put people in solitary confinement for no reason. He just basically was a fascist. He used the power. He had power and he used it just for his own sadism, essentially. And so basically, it turns out that he had devised this breakout plan. It'd been in the run for a few years, and he had devised it with his ex-cellmate, who's been out for a year. But they had made a plan to rendezvous on a certain date. And it turns out that thusly this guy's died. But he had told his wife of the plan, and the wife wasn't sure if she was going to go through with it or not, but she turns up. And so instead of this criminal guy that he anticipated picking him up, it was actually his wife. His wife thus then tells him about this book. Basically, this guy is kind of old mafia, more like he's basically an old criminal kind of boss. But he's kind of like semi-retired. But the guy was like, well, he obviously had money coming in. And she's like, oh, he dug up all this dirt on all the local bigwigs and compiled it into this folder. And so our man gets access to the folder. And the first person he goes after is a big industrialist. I think he potentially is a politician too. But he's a big industrialist. So he goes after him. I can't actually remember the full plot. But anyway, yeah, he goes after he goes after the industrialist who also has this mistress who's his secretary. He moves in opposite the secretary. He's kind of falling for her, at least in a sexual nature. So he kills this bigwig guy. Oh, he blackmails him. Sorry, he blackmails him. Here's it. He blackmails him. The guy gives him the money for the blackmail. But he's basically engineered a trap. But because he's such a bigwig, the guy that he's hired to kill him and him are they're all driving out to basically to the dump because um, they want to need to kill him and dump him so that where no one can find him essentially. But he gets lucky and the car goes over a bump. He's basically able to overpower the two people and kill them. And so then he ends up dating the secretary, who is actually only really who basically is who only really agrees to dating him. She was a little hung up on this industrialist guy, but she basically agrees to dating him because he can supply her with the finer things in life. And then I'm getting a bit sketchy how it all ends up. And then he's also in this weird, like S&M relationship with the dead crime guy's wife, who she gets a kick out of being dominated. So it's got a little weird sexual fetish stuff in there. I think it all ends up with, I think our main guy dies in the end. I think he goes one too far and gets caught. Can't quite remember, but it was absolutely fantastic. it's really I mean, I read it as a kind of anti-capitalist treatise, really, but I think Clifford Adams probably just wrote it as a good yarn, a good sleazy noir. Everyone gets their come up. There's no likable characters. Everyone's completely floored. I think he probably wrote it as a kind of quite typical 1950s pulp novel. I mean, he possibly had those leanings anyway. But yeah, that's how I read it, and I read into it more like this is a great kind of anti-capitalist, that style of America. I don't think it's anti-American, but anti like corporate capitalist America. I did not really do that justice at all, but that was essentially the book. If you have a spare couple dollars, I would highly recommend getting it on the Kindle. I don't think you necessarily need a copy of it. I don't necessarily know that I would reread it. I might reread it in like 5-10 years time. But it's definitely not one that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna read that every year. Definitely not. But whilst you're reading it, it's fantastic. It goes along really well. It's very compelling. It's everything you want in a little sleazy noir 1950s book. And yeah, I think that's me. What I'm currently reading right now is, I actually have this right here, but it's called But Death Runs Faster. And it's by William P. McGivern. And you may be familiar with William P. McGivern. A few of his books got turned into movies, very successful movies. The most famous being The Big Heat with Glenn Ford. I believe I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure The Big Heat is the one that a lot of people will know because of the very famous scene where Lee Marvin throws coffee onto Gloria Graham's face, like hot steaming coffee, like disfigures her. It's quite a brutal movie. Definitely need to read that afterwards. But also Odds Against Tomorrow he wrote, and that was made into a movie. And I believe Rogue Cop as well. There's probably one more I'm forgetting, but I think Rogue Cop is also one of his that got made into a movie. But so far, really good. Really enjoying it, and I think I will definitely be looking out for more. And this was actually, I just found this in a secondhand thrift store, and it's very, very surprised because I've never seen William Peter Gibbon secondhand, and so yeah, very interested. This one is great because it's set in. So firstly, it does that great thing that a lot of noir novels do. Is kind of where it starts. It kind of starts just after the murder, and the cops are coming to interview the suspect, and then it does like, oh, and this is how we got here. It goes back in time, so it does that. So it starts off with this guy, expecting the cops, needing to get his story straight. We're not sure why, but he's like, he knows the cops are coming. He needs to like basically get his story straight. So we know he's lying. We don't know why he's lying. We don't know how he's involved. We know who the victim is. We know there's been some sort of altercation where our the guy, the main character has blood on him, and we know that he needs to lie for some reason. But other than that, and that basically, and then the cop comes and he's like, basically, where were you tonight? He was like, oh, I've been home since there was a party where this guy died. Although I don't know if the guy knows that he died at the start of it. We just know there's been some sort of altercation. But he says, I walked someone home and I've been home since like 1:30. But when the cop came in, he put his own coat away, and so at the end, the cop's like, you need to come to the station. You lied. You weren't home all night because your coat was wet. But it didn't start raining until like 2:30. So I know you were lying about that. And then now I need to know why you were lying. And then it goes back to the flashback before. But it's set in a pulp magazine. Editor, our main guy is the editor, and the victim is his sub-editor. So it is very interesting. I like when kind of pulp writers write about writers or writing or pulp or the pulp magazine kind of things. I'm really enjoying it so far, and I think I will hopefully get it finished today. Actually, I just started it yesterday, but it's like 170 pages. It's pretty fast paced. It's easy to read. So it's one of these ones you can easily read in one sitting or a weekend or something. So hopefully you enjoyed my dire ramblings on, my incoherent thoughts. And if you didn't, maybe you just enjoy watching me stroke this dog all the time. But anyway, this is me, hopefully back to making semi-regular videos. Hope you've all been good. Let me know what you've been reading. And just, hopefully you're all settling in for the holidays and you're going to have a wonderful time. But if not, let me know. Let me know what your gripes are. You sure as hear enough about mine. So comment below whatever you want. I'm always here to read the comments and respond where I can. So have a great time. Thanks. Bye.